Welcome back to World Crisis Radio for Assange and WikiLeaks, an obvious CIA operation, a limited hangout, a self-exposure, a striptease, as you can read in my interview in the Italian press coming off this ANSA wire of December 7th, St. Ambrose's Day, big day in Italy when the Scala Opera House opens again for the season. This year it was the Valkyrie, maybe not such a great choice, but Assange and company. So the idea that Assange is going to attack the Bank of America, we want to be sure and check the short interest, right, in the SEC filings and see if Soros and his wolf pack of hedge funds are actually shorting the Bank of America in advance of whatever Assange may do. I'm sure they're shorting them already, as a matter of fact. So this charismatic zombie, I think, has worn out his welcome. He's now expendable of his masters, and his end may indeed be tragic. And it is tragic, of course, because this is the Anne Hamilton Byrne cult from the 1970s. So compared to Obama, he's a Manchurian operative, maybe 10 years younger, a far more degraded time in the history of Anglo-American intelligence. Remember also that the first publicity breakthrough for WikiLeaks was Cass Sunstein in the Washington Post in February 2007, where he gave them a plug. And this is the same Cass Sunstein who's now sitting in the White House. He's the author of the Cognitive Disruption paper. So what we're looking at, WikiLeaks is the cognitive disruption that Cass Sunstein called for and arranged. Now, changing gears again, it's Pearl Harbor Week. What do I mean, Pearl Harbor Week? Well, it's 69 years ago that we have the attack on Pearl Harbor. However, not just today, it's not just December 7th. There's also the beginning of a rather larger war, somewhat more strategic, which is Hitler's speech of December 11th, 69 years ago tomorrow, from the point of view of recording the program on December 10th. Hitler goes to the Reichstag and demands a declaration of war against the United States. And he's operating under the Axis, the Rome, Berlin, Tokyo Axis tripartite pact, sometimes known as the Anti-Comintern Pact, I guess. This one is directed mainly against the United States. The power against which the tripartite pact, or the Rome, Berlin, Tokyo Axis, is directed is the U.S. And that's very interesting to see what Hitler had to say in his speech to the Reichstag. The first thing he says is that there's only one person responsible for World War II, and that it's Franklin D. Roosevelt. Ooh, how is this possible? Hitler says, these documents, and what he's got is documents from the Polish Foreign Ministry, a country that he's just rolled over in the last 2 years. These documents clearly and shockingly reveal the extent to which one man and the powers behind him are responsible for the Second World War, Franklin D. Roosevelt. And the idea is, in Hitler's mind, he says, it was Roosevelt who encouraged the Poles to resist me and forced me to have recourse to war. If only the Poles had not been supported, they might have capitulated, then no war would have been necessary. And then we get a very interesting refrain. Peppered through this speech is the constant refrain that Roosevelt is a provocateur, that Germany has been provoked by the United States. Isn't this interesting? Roosevelt provoked Hitler. No one would attack America unless America itself had provoked the attack, says Hitler to the Reichstag. The argument essentially is that Roosevelt is facing a large and active rebellion of businessmen who hate the New Deal, and therefore he's looking for foreign wars and foreign adventures to detract attention from his failures at home. He feared that if peace were to come about in Europe, the billions that FDR had squandered on military spending would soon be recognized as an obvious case of fraud, because no one would attack America unless America itself provoked the attack, says Hitler 69 years ago on the 11th of December, he then goes on to describe Roosevelt as this provocateur, and it's just constant. It's actually in the formal note that Germany sends to the United States. Basically, he says we're finally declaring war on the U.S. For our part, we will now do what this provocateur has been trying to achieve for years, meaning Roosevelt, and I guess that means start the war. Despite years of intolerable provocations by President Roosevelt, Germany and Italy sincerely and very patiently tried to prevent the expansion of this war. Yeah, that's right. Severe provocations towards Germany were launched by Roosevelt and so forth. So you get, I hope, the idea. Now, who talks about this kind of stuff today? Well, the idea that Roosevelt provoked Japan and that's the story of Pearl Harbor, that Roosevelt deliberately provoked Japan is, generally speaking, the line of the Roosevelt-hating libertarian movement. Of course, these are people who draw their economic theory from von Hayek and von Mises, the arch reactionaries of the Austrian school, or maybe from Milton Friedman. But still, the idea is that Roosevelt was a provocateur. He provoked Japan. And I guess the main book in this regard is Robert Stinnett's Day of Deceit, which lists, he's got a document which says the United States, Roosevelt, provoked Japan. How did the U.S. provoke Japan? Well, by trying to have the U.S. use British bases in the Pacific, by using Dutch bases in the Pacific, by helping Chiang Kai-shek, for whom the Nguyen Minh Dang, the Chinese nationalists, for whom the sympathy of the U.S. population was quite large, to send cruisers to the Philippines, to send subs to the Far East, to put the U.S. Pacific Fleet in Hawaii, which is your own territory. It's not somebody else's territory. It's within your own territorial waters, to help the Dutch to the Japanese from getting their oil, and then ultimately to cut off U.S. trade with Japan. And in the opinion of Stinnett, somehow these are intolerable provocations which are calculated to goad a peace-loving and benign Japan, which never would have attacked. These add up to the inevitable push that Japan gets into the war. Now, the mentality behind this is skewed very far in the direction of soft-on fascism, pro-fascism, an absolute moral chaos where the difference between an aggressor and the target of an aggression is completely lost. Japan needs to be provoked. Japan attacked Manchuria. They attacked China. They attacked French Indochina. They attacked the Dutch possessions. They attacked the British possessions. They attacked the French possessions. They attacked an independent country like Thailand along the way. Were these provocations? Did every one of those countries provoke Japan in some way in the 1930s? How about the rape of Nanjing in 1937, where the Japanese slaughter 500,000 Chinese openly, in public, news film, cameras, photography, journalists, every newspaper in the world had the story, the rape of Nanjing. Did the 500,000 Chinese provoke Japan to come in? I think this is absolutely fantastic. The unspoken premise is that the only possible U.S. policy would have been cringing appeasement, that anything, even fortifying the Pacific Islands, was a intolerable affront, right? If you build some trenches on Wake or Midway, that's a direct threat. That's a provocation. That's allowed. This is a moral chaos inhabited by these libertarians. We'll be back in a minute.